Hey, Lance Egan here with Fly Fish Food with your first on the water fly fishing skill builder. Today we're going to cover a few things. Number one, the basics, putting your rod and reel together. We'll move from there into approaching winter water, and we'll finish up with how animating your fly can improve your catch.
That's a big round, bro.
All right, let's get right to it. We just got to the edge of the river. Let's start by assembling our fly rod. There is no wrong way to do this. You could start with any section you like, but to me, the easiest way to do it is to start with the tip. That way, the rod is being put together and getting away from you this way, rather than if you start at the butt, you may have to set the butt section down. The lighter tip sections then go away instead of the heavier butt section. So we're handling heavier and heavier pieces with each segment. As you put the pieces together, you want to put them together with a little bit of force, not too much. You don't want to jam them on there. They've got to be able to come apart later, but you do want to put them on there with a bit of force so that while you're casting over the course of the day that they don't work loose. All right, we've got the rod together. This is a 4-piece model. There are still a few 2-piece rods made, some 3-piece. 4 is the most popular. There are a few that are 5- and 6-piece also. Next up, we're going to add our reel. There's 2 different types of reel seats. One is an up-locking, the other is a down-locking. This particular model is a down-locking seat. So since I'm a right-hander, I'm going to put my reel handle on my left-hand side. I'm going to get this reel foot here. I'm going to find that groove in the reel seat, stick the butt of the reel in there. Then I'm going to find the groove on the sliding ring, and then we'll put our locking nuts into place. I usually give it a little wiggle to make sure it's nice and tight. Then we'll sit in our second locking ring. Now we have our reel attached. If you're a left-hander and you favor reeling with the right, you would of course put the reel on the other direction. Now we have the rod put together, the reel on. The next step is threading the line through the guides. Naturally, what most people want to do is find the end of the leader and start pushing it through here. While that will work, there's a better way. First, pull enough line off the reel to thread it all the way through the guides. I'm now past my leader and into my fly line. Next up, we're going to just make a loop near the end of the fly line here with our fingers, and we're going to pass that loop through the guides. Ideally, you do this in an area where you're not going to wrap your line up in a bunch of sticks or something like that, rocks, but we're just going to pass this line, this loop of line through each of these guides. Once I get far enough away from myself that I can't reach anymore, I'm going to gently set the rod down, and then we'll continue putting this loop of line through each of the guides. One key here is to just take a couple steps. One thing we see people do is start doing this. If you short arc your rod and you bend it in too tight of an area, it's a great way to break a rod. We don't suggest that. So rather than bending it, I'm just going to take some steps down the rod, keep using this loop of line. The reason I like this loop of line is if you were to accidentally step on it or it slips out of your hands, if you let this go, it will usually stop and it won't slide all the way back down through your guides. It usually opens up enough that it kind of holds its place. So we're continuing with that loop of line all the way through each of the guides, taking steps down the rod. Once we get through there, then we can just pull our leader through, and we have our line all strung through the rod. Simple as that. One more quick tip for you, and that is when you get to fishing, try not to pull line off the reel while you're casting. Here's why. If I'm casting and I'm pulling line off the reel while I'm casting, I'm pulling it directly across that little reel support right there, and it murders your line. It'll actually groove your reel. Instead, pull off all the line you need straight away so it's not contacting the reel at all. Pull off every bit of line you might need, and then just work that line out as you cast without having to ruin your reel and your line. Something that we see a lot of people do, it's costing you money in lines, it's ruining your reels. Don't pull line off the reel while you're casting. All right, now let's talk about approaching a river in winter. A few things to consider. One, rivers in winter, generally speaking, are on the low side of flows. They're usually quite clear. I think a couple things to consider would be your clothing. Try and blend in a little bit. You know, your orange, fluorescent orange jacket, your red jacket, bright blue. That's, you know, something that really contrasts the background, not in your favor. It doesn't have to be camo, but something that's a bit more drab, grays, olive, something that's going to blend in. If there's a lot of snow around, even light colors, white can be a sort of camo, if you will, in some situations. Second, be prepared for what you're going to encounter on the river. Less likely to see a bunch of big bugs, so your flies should be prepped in smaller sizes. as we approach winter water. If you're nymphing, lighter rigs, smaller split shot, lighter bead heads, smaller indicators, and so on. Next, because the fish are usually found in slower water in the cold temps, we don't want to rush into the river. We want to walk up slowly. As we moved into this section, downstream of us is a little bit fast and pockety. We moved into this winter water here, and we're just moving slow and looking for a nose to poke up here or there, something that might tell us where some fish are. Think small, think slow, and look for slowish deep water to find the fish. All right, our final tip in this skill builder is animating your fly. Most of us are really versed in dead drift, nymphs, dries, whatever, even dead drifting a streamer. But we want to just make you think for a second about animating your fly. That could be a dry fly, that could be a nymph, or it could be a streamer. In this case, I have a streamer on here. This is the Poacher, one of my favorite streamers. It's a heavily weighted streamer that sinks quickly, and when fished on a Euro rig, it's very easy to animate by letting it get to depth and then twitching it along as it drifts. You can also fish a fly like this on a floating line or a sinking line or a sink tip with a second streamer, or just by itself and just animate it by stripping it in. But for this technique with the Euro rig, what I'm going to do is toss it into some deeper water. I'm going to allow it to get to depth, and then I'm just going to twitch it slightly. I'm not moving the rod much, not moving the line much, not moving the fly much. Ooh, there's one. Just letting it drift along, and as it drifts, just trying to keep in contact with it so that when a fish like this eats it, we're ready to set the hook. Let's get this guy off and back in the water. So as you can see, it's very effective. There's a couple of tricks to it though. Some of the most common mistakes are moving the fly too much, jigging it too much, not being in contact on the drop. A lot of times the fish will eat it as the fly falls, so we're going to let it fall, be in contact, and then taking up slack. If I make that same cast out over here, but I don't take up any slack, as I swim it towards me, my rod gets higher and higher. Now, even if a fish eats, I'm kind of running out of real estate in which to set the hook. So, oh, there's one. I got to set the hook anyway. As I stalled the fly there, that wasn't a very good hook set. I wasn't ready for that one. But as we get it in, we're going to let it get to depth. Then we're going to twitch it, and I'm going to be taking up slack by running the line through my rod hand and either stripping in or hand twist retrieving. Either one's just fine with your non-rod hand. That way, when a fish eats, I'm able to quickly pinch the line against the cork handle and get tight very, very quickly. In, make sure it gets down first. I'm trying not to lead it along too much, thinking more moving the fly vertically. Then as the current takes it downstream, just kind of keeping contact and giving it little twitches. There was a bump. Little twitches to make it look alive, just animating that fly. Whether you're doing this with nymphs or you're animating a dry fly, or in this case a streamer, sometimes animating the fly can make a big difference to your catch rate. One more fish to the net. If you're enjoying these skill builders, don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get notified each week as we drop a new skill. And also in the comments below, if there's some topics you'd like to see us cover, please let us know what those are, and we hope to keep them coming your way.